He says, when you go to colleges and universities, they always say you should have a fallback option that you can fall back on. And he said, look, I never understood why people say that. If anything, I'll fall forward because I want to know where I'm falling. Why would I fall backwards? Fall forward. Don't fall backwards and say, you know what, I committed sins. Fall forward. I'll do a good deed. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're not fasting today, are you? And if you are, you should break your fast. So we should have a little bit more spirit than that. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. قال الله عز وجل في كتاب العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تبطلوا صدقاتكم بالمن والأذى. وقال عز وجل في مقام آخر إن الحسنات يذهبن السيئات ذلك ذكرى للذاكرين. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام أتبع السيئة بالحسنة تمحها أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. My dear brothers, elders, friends, mothers and sisters in Islam, Eid Mubarak to all of you. We can hug, thankfully, because hugging is always confusing on the day of Eid. Some do 3, some do 5, some do different type of bear hugs. So on today we can just stay away from each other and give virtual hugs. We can't shake hands, but that's also it's going to be tough. I've already shook people's hands, and I'm open to shaking anyone's hands. But people might be a little bit careful, so don't go around shaking people's hands. Today's Eid is much different than many other Eids we've been part of in our life. Just like Ramadan has been much different than many of the Ramadans we've been part of in our life. And there's no denying that. I never ever walk up to a speech with the paper in my life. And today, you ever see me walk with the paper in my life? Never in my life. But there was a poem that I wrote down that I'm going to say to you guys in this talk. And I didn't have time to memorize it. So I just quickly wrote it down. I wrote this poem down like 4 years ago. I never looked at it, never memorized it. And honestly, I was in the morning when I was putting my books away, this was a bookmark in one of my books. And I pulled it out and I saw it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to say it today. And this poem is going to be what I want to speak to you guys about today. And that is, there's this very interesting phenomenon. There's a very interesting concept among the pious people of the past, that they would have these very intimate, personal conversations with makhluk, creations that don't have a tongue. They cannot speak. So you will see poets writing about the mountains of Mecca. And they say, if these mountains had a tongue, what would they say? They've seen it all. They've seen the Prophet ﷺ being pelted with stones. They've seen the Prophet bleeding. They saw the birth of the Prophet ﷺ. They saw Bilal being dragged in the streets. They saw the Prophet ﷺ getting married to Khadija. They saw the day the Prophet left Mecca. They also witnessed the day the Prophet. So the women who are in the back over there, there's a lot of space in the cafe, in the banquet hall. So if my wife or Usman's wife can take the children to the cafe, so the brothers and sisters can pay attention to the talk. There's a lot of space. I would think that you would probably come to that conclusion before we started, but I'll remind you, could you please take the kids to the cafe so the brothers who have come from so far, they can pay attention. So just take them to that cafe area, or the cafe is better than the banquet hall. The cafe is better than the banquet hall. If you can go there, there's a room inside there, the children can play, have a great time. MashaAllah, this building is big enough to take care of all of them. All right? Is that better? Jazakallah khair. We love the kids, let them have a fun. They're not here to play. They're not here to sit down, they're here to play. And the mountains also witnessed the Prophet coming back to Mecca and Fatih Mecca, right? These mountains of Mecca, poets speak to the mountains and they say if they had a tongue, what would they say? Poets speak to the streets of Medina and they say if these streets had a tongue, what would they say? about how the day the Prophet came to Medina, if the trees min Thaniyat al-Wada' from the valley of Thaniya, if those trees had a tongue, what would they say about the first time they saw the Prophet's face? What would they say? How would they describe the feeling when the Prophet walked into Medina and when Bilal gave the first adhan? Right? What would they say? This is an amazing concept. One poet, he looks to the moon and he says to the moon, "Oh moon, you've seen it all." Right? The mountains of Makkah probably just saw the Prophet and people in Makkah, but the moon seen it all. Is that right or wrong? From day one, the moon was there. The moon seen it all. Seen all the prophets. Seen Yusuf alayhi salam when he was thrown in the well. Seen him when he came out. Seen him when he went to the prison. The moon was always there. So this poet, he speaks to the moon. And I'm going to take you on this journey before we come to my topic. He speaks to the moon and he asks the moon as a conversation. He says, "You know what? I want you to speak to me. I want you to tell me what you've seen in your life. This journey, when he's speaking to the moon, because you've seen it all." Isn't that an interesting concept, Ali? Right? The moon has seen everything. You've seen all the prophets, you've seen all the stories we read in the Quran, all the stories we read in the Hadith, the moon's seen it. So he says to the moon, he says, لَقَدْ عِشْتَ يَا بَدْرٍ دَهْرًا طَوِيلٍ وعاشرت من أهلنا من عبر فهل لي بربك أخبارهم وحدث بها خبرا عن خبر فأبدأ اشتياقا لهذا الحديث وزاد ائتلاقا يسر النظر. The man looked at the moon and he said to the moon, "Look, you've been living a long life. You've seen it all. You've seen every person who ever walked on the face of the earth. فَهَلْ لِي بِرَبِّكَ أَخْبَارَهُمْ Can you please tell me something about what you've seen? You probably have all the stories in the world. Tell me something you've seen. Tell me about the people. We heard about the Prophet. We heard about their situation, the Sahaba. But please, again, I'll make another announcement to the families if they can take their kids to their cafe. I don't think I'm asking too much, am I? It's just a very simple request. If we can take the kids to their cafe, and the cafes have 10 by 10 doors. If you close the door, the kids can have a blast in there. That'll be an awesome feat, inshallah. And the kids can have a blast. It's a huge area. They can have Sheikh Abdul Aziz's wife is also here. She can help out too. And after Salah, they can run around the entire building. The men will evacuate, the kids will play. Okay? It's safer for them because there's stairs over here and we don't want them to be playing on the stairs. So he says, "Please tell me about what you've seen." So then he says, فَأَبْدَأ اشْتِيَاقًا لِهَذَا الْحَدِيثِ Forgive me, I should have memorized it. But I wrote it 4 years ago. I never thought about memorizing it. I promise next time I'll memorize it. He says the moon, it became very happy when this conversation started because the moon started remembering those good old days. When someone tells you, "Tell me about the stories when you were young." You like those stories because your hair was still on your head. Right? You like those stories because in those memories, your parents were still alive. In those memories, you have many other good memories. So you start talking about that. So the moon is told to speak about those memories. وَزَادَ إِئْتِلَاقًا يَسُرُّ النَّظَرِ And it started brimming with light. What did it say? وَقَالَ The moon said, "Where do you want me to start with? Where should the story begin? أَتَعْنِ الرَّسُولِ الْكَرِيمِ Should I begin speaking about the Prophet ﷺ? أَتَعْنِ الصِّدِّيقِ أَتَعْنِ عُمَرِ Or do you want me to start speaking about Abu Bakr or Umar? أَتَعْنِ الرِّجَالِ أَمَاتُ الضَّلَالِ Should I start speaking about those people who wiped off oppression and tyranny from the face of this earth? وَأَحْيَوْا بِهَدِّ الْكِتَابَ الْبَشَرِ And even though people were living, they revived their hearts through their lives. There was no life before them. There was no life before them. And they revived those lives. They revived those hearts. Farazdaq, he said, "I'm the son of the one who gives life." And he was about to be hung for this. "I'm the son of the one who gives life." That's no one can say that. Can you say that? Who gives life? Allah does. And he was going to be hung for this statement. He was brought, and he was a poet, and he was a linguistic man of his time, and he was brought to the caliph's palace, to the courtroom. He said, "What did you say?" He said, "I'm the son of the one who gives life." And the king said, "Why? You know what? I'm going to give you a minute to explain yourself. Why did you say that for? You know, only that only belongs to Allah." He said, "Haven't you read the ayah, وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا?" That the one who gives life to someone who was about to die is as if he gave life to the entire world. He says, "My grandfather was the one who would ransom his life to save daughters from being buried. And my grandfather saved more than 70 girls from being buried alive." And Allah is saying that about that person who saved someone's life. أحياها أحياها is a mu'annath dhamir. The one who gave life, who saved of innocent girl's life from being buried, that person has given life to the entire universe. And he says, "You know what, you're a genius, you can go." Right? So he says, are you talking about those men who wiped off tyranny and oppression from this world? Are you talking about those people who revived life in people's hearts? And he says, أَقُولُ وَقَدْ شَاهَدَتْ مُقْلَتَايَ I'll speak to you and I'll tell you the truth. These eyes have witnessed جَلِيلُ الْمَعَانِي وَأَسْمَى الْعَبَرِ. He says these people, this sentence, I'm going to explain it to you and I can't translate it. What it means is, there is some sort of definition in the dictionary of modesty. You look up modesty and there'll be a translation of modesty, right? You look up truthfulness, there'll be a translation of truthfulness. You know what he said? He said these people define those qualities. They're the ones that wrote the definition of those qualities. What dignity is, you learned that from their lives. What modesty is, you learned that from their lives. It wasn't even written in dictionaries before they came. And their lives became a means of writing those terminologies. You know how sometimes you say something and you get to coin that terminology? Just do it, it becomes Nikes. Mamba mentality becomes Kobe's. He says, well, every good quality you can think of, they coined it. Wallah, I've never heard a better praise for Sahaba than this. Never heard it. Like he went so beyond. He said, these people are the ones who set the translations and dictionaries straight when it came to this. People had a different image of modesty. People had a different image of what haya, what dignity, what truthfulness meant before they came. And they set the record straight. And then he says, أولئك من سطر العلا أجل الصفات وأعلى السير رسول أبي كريم الطباع وأصحابه حوله كالدرر تنام المعالي على طرفه وتصحو على صوته في السحر. He says these people they exemplified the highest of character. This is a prophet, Abi means lofty. This is a prophet of lofty status, of noble nature. And his companions were sitting around him like stars that would twinkle at night, like pearls. This is should I go back and explain how that gathering was? When the Prophet would sit and the companions would sit around him, these were like pearls, twinkling like the stars in the skies. That's how the scene was on the day when the Prophet would sit and the Sahaba would sit around him. Right? That's how that day was. It was a beautiful scene. And he says, should I tell you about those scenes? This story, I said it 2 days ago, but every time I say it, it really is so powerful. Under this, the author writes, and he wrote this story. Under this, he says, should I tell you about that day when the Prophet was sitting there, sallallahu, with all of his Sahaba who were like pearls twinkling in the sky like the stars? And all of a sudden his grandson walked into the room. His grandchildren walked in and they sat down. Right now, grandkids, kids are walking around, so we can hear them. These grandchildren walked in, and Hassan was a child who had eloquence. Hassan was a child who could speak. But Hussein radhiallahu anhu was a child who would stutter when he would speak. And he came to the gathering, and he tried to say a few words. And the Prophet ﷺ was sitting there, and he started to speak, but he could not formulate words. First of all, because he was a kid, he didn't know what to say. And second of all, he was stuttering. And he kept on stuttering, till there was an atmosphere of people being amazed and a little bit of shock and a little bit of awkwardness that spawned into the room. They were awkward. It was an awkward moment. And the Prophet's looking, and the Sahaba say, we were looking at this child. He's doing this. He's stuttering while he's trying to come up with a sentence. And if you're sitting there and your child walks in the room with your guests and he's trying to say something, even if he doesn't stutter, he embarrasses us in front of our guests, we say, go inside the room. We say, Bazao, sharam nahi aati, there's older people sitting here. And here's the Prophet sitting with the Sahaba, and here comes Hussein, and he's stuttering. He's impaired in his speech. And the Sahaba say, we felt awkward. We didn't know what to do. Should we go hug him? Should we go to the Prophet? And then we looked at the Prophet ﷺ, and he was looking at Hussein, and he had this huge smile on his face. Huge smile on his face. And he was just waiting for Hussein to complete his sentence. After many minutes, Hussein radiallahu anhu completed his sentence. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, don't worry about my son. He inherited this from his father Musa alayhi salam. He inherited this quality because Musa also stuttered. And he said he connected him with his father Musa. Don't worry about this. He said, should I tell you about that gathering? And then he says, Tanamul ma'ali ala tarfihi. Such a beautiful way of saying the character of the Prophet. He says, dignity rests on the tip of the eye of the Prophet. Dignity is in his eyes. When he sleeps, it sleeps with him. And when he wakes up, he lights up the world with his dignity. And I'm mentioning this because there is this concept in our heritage where we speak to objects that don't have a tongue, and we ask them to speak to us and tell us, what was it like, O mountains of Mecca? What was it like, O streets of Medina? What was it like, O moon? Tell us about that. And I say to you over here, we should speak to Ramadan and ask Ramadan, if Ramadan had a tongue, what would it say? What would it say to us? If Ramadan had a tongue, what would it say to us? It would tell us, in my words, it would tell us that, I'm a guest, I came, but it was a really interesting Ramadan. Usually I'm hosted in masjids, where I hear Quran being recited, where I hear people crying, where I see iftar happening. But this year I was not hosted in masjids. This year I was not hosted in Islamic centers. This year I was deprived of that. I was a guest that was supposed to be hosted in masjids. And he probably would tell us, you better straighten up your act. These homes were open because it's from the permission of Allah. I'm also a makhluk of Allah. I can't make decisions on my own. Allah makes decisions for me. If you don't change your act, it might be the same next year. If Ramadan had a tongue, it would tell those who could not get closer to Allah, did you not hear the most merciful person to walk on the face of the earth, the prayer he made against that person who witnessed Ramadan, and I was a guest in their home. I even though they did, whether they were willing or unwilling, but Allah sent me to their home, and I was a guest, and they never valued me as a guest. And even though I came to their home, they could not get the mercy and forgiveness of Allah. Did you not hear the dua of the Prophet against this person, ﷺ, that if Ramadan, may Allah destroy that person who witnessed the month of Ramadan and could not be forgiven? Did you not hear that dua? If Ramadan had a tongue, it would say to everyone who sat in i'tikaf, Brother Khusru, Ashad Bhai, Abdul Rahman, Arib, Talha, Qusay, Mushtaq, Mehdi, Rehan, Ibrahim, Saeed, everybody who sat here for i'tikaf, Wallahi Ramadan would say, you honored me. You honored me. I was sitting around as a guest. Uni Abdul Wahab came later. I was sitting around as a guest for a while. And nobody was taking care of me. And all of a sudden you came around and you sat in the masjid for 10 days. Brother Ashad, all of us. And it would say to us, thanks a lot. I appreciate that you took care of me. Right, Asir? That's what it would say to us. And anyone in America who's going to watch this video afterwards, it would tell us the same thing. If you did a good job, it would have told you this. If Ramadan had a tongue, what would it say to you? What would it say to us? How do we live in the month of Ramadan? If Ramadan had a tongue, it would tell all of us generally, I'm gone. But Allah is not just the Rabb of Ramadan, Allah is the Rabb of all the other months. He's not just in Ramadan. His mercy is not confined to the month of Ramadan. He would tell us to follow through. He would tell us that the actions are not determined by the act, but they're determined by the follow through. Actions are not determined by the act. They're determined by follow through. A person can do good deeds, but if he follows them up with a bad deed, he wipes away the good deed. A person can give charity all day. He did a good act. He did good deeds. But then he did something wrong. لا تبطلوا صدقاتكم بالمن والأذى. Allah says, don't waste, don't follow up your good act with a bad act. You'll waste it. And Mu'adh bin Jabal anhu, talking about final advices. When Mu'adh bin Jabal was crying when he was leaving the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet said, لا تجزع. Don't cry. Why are you worried for? Don't cry. He said, Rasulullah, you told me I'm never going to see you in my life again. The Prophet left him with an advice. He said, let me tell you something. Let me give you some advice. He said, oh Mu'adh, wherever you are in the world, make sure you perfect the follow through. Make sure you perfect the follow through. You can make a shot in basketball, but your follow through matters. Your golf swing follow through matters. Your baseball swing follow through matters. How you follow through matters. And he says, oh Mu'adh, remember the follow through. That's all I got to say to you. And he said, oh Mu'adh, every time you do a bad deed, follow it through with a good deed. Allah will wipe away your bad deed. Allah will wipe it away. If you did a sin, don't worry about it. This is what Ramadan will tell us. Even if you were bad in Ramadan, and you never got to worship Allah the way you wanted to, and you never got to finish the Quran the way you wanted to, the way you should have, and you never got to cry in the entire month of Ramadan, it's fine. If Ramadan had a tongue, wallahi would tell us, remember the words the Prophet told Mu'adh bin Jabal, just follow it up with a good deed. Just follow it up. Just have a good follow through. And you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You know, one I'm not going to say the person's name, but he said something very interesting. He says, you know, when you go to colleges and universities, they always say you should have a fallback option that you can fall back on. And he said, look, I never understood why people say that. If anything, I'll fall forward because I want to know where I'm falling. Why would I fall backwards? Fall forward. Don't fall backwards and say, you know what, I committed sins. Fall forward. I'll do a good deed. Who cares about falling backwards? Who cares about what happened? Ramadan would have told us, look, follow it through with a good deed. When that man came to the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, you know, anything you can imagine I did with this lady except for zina. I did everything. Everything you can think of, I've done except for zina with this lady. And the Prophet said, talk to me after salah. And then he comes, prays salah. He said, Ya Rasulullah, please tell me what to do. I'm suffering. I'm burning from inside. I committed this sin. And he says, هَلَّا صَلَّيْتَ مَعَنَا الظُّهْرِ. Did you pray dhuhr with us? He said, yes. He said, have you not read the verse of Quran, إِنَّ الْحَسَنَاتِ يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ? That verily good deeds wipe away bad deeds. Allah has wiped away your bad deed. You followed it up with a good deed, Allah has taken care of your bad deed. If Ramadan was here and had a tongue, it would have told us, listen, it doesn't matter how you spent the month of Ramadan. Follow it up with a good deed. That's why it comes in hadith. The word atba'a comes. Man sama Ramadan fa'atba'ahu bi min Shawwal. A person who fasts in the month of Ramadan and then follows it up with 6 fasts in the month of Shawwal. There's a follow-up. You see that follow-through? There's always that follow-through. The one who fasts in the month of Ramadan and then he follows that through with 6 in Shawwal, it's as if he will get the reward of fasting his entire life. That's why the follow-through matters so much. If Ramadan was alive, and I'll conclude by saying this, if Ramadan was alive, it would tell us, it was a very strange Ramadan. There was more than 80, 90 passengers sitting on a PA flight, flying from Lahore to Karachi. A normal flight, these people were thinking they're going to go home to their parents, to their families, to their loved ones, and they spent the entire month of Ramadan. They witnessed every single odd night. They witnessed everything. They were in the month of Ramadan. They witnessed, they were in Jumatul Wida, and all of a sudden, they thought they were going to land in 1 minute. The pilot said, we're landing. Even the plane came so close to landing, but the landing gear did not come out. and they had to come take a 10-minute run or turn around back, and everyone in the plane thought they're landing. No one even thought they were going to come down crashing. And all of a sudden this plane comes crashing down. With that plane came crashing down the souls of many people. Right? Ramadan would have told us those people did not think they were going to die that day. Those people had people waiting for them at the airports. Those people had gifts already purchased for them. Those people probably had Eid cards on their names. Those people probably had written Eid cards from that person to somebody. But that Eid card never got there. That gift never got to them. They never got to embrace their loved one. They fell before they got to Karachi. Yes, Ramadan would have told us they're lucky. They passed away on Jummatul Wida. We know that, we believe that. We believe that. They passed away after all the odd nights. They're fortunate. But Ramadan would have told us if they had a tongue, you are not in that situation right now. And just like they weren't planning for them, they weren't planning to go down that day. Similarly, you should be very careful. You don't know when you're going. You have no idea. You don't know if I'm ever going to be a guest in your house again. How do you stand around thinking that I'm going to be here every single year? How do you think that I'm going to come every year, I'm going to be in your house? Ramadan, if it had a tongue, would it say, take lesson from that flight. Take a lesson from that flight. And put yourself in those shoes, that if you're dying and you're on your deathbed and that plane is coming crashing down, would you be leaving this world with a smile? Like, it doesn't matter, man. You can come crashing down. I'm all good. When Amish was leaving this world, his children were crying. His children were crying. He said, what? Why are you guys crying for? He was on his deathbed and his children were crying. Would we be able to say that to our kids? I'm going to ask you this. If you were told you're leaving right now, would you be able to say this? Amish said, why are you crying for? Your father has not missed Takbir-e-Ula for the last 60 years. Don't worry about me, I'm good. Worry about yourself. Don't cry for me, cry for yourself. When Ibn Idris az-Zahid was leaving this world, his children were crying in his house. And he's leaving this world in that house. He says, why are you guys crying for? Why are you crying for? I have read 4,000 Qur'ans in this room. I'm dying in this room where I read 4,000 Qur'ans. Nothing's happening to me. You should worry about yourself. What are we going to say? What are we going to say? Ramadan's telling us to think about that. It's coming with that. If it had a tongue, Wallahi would say that to us. Are you ready for that? I came and I left. But are you ready for that? This message came this month of Ramadan. This happened. Don't sit here oblivious. This was so close to home. I don't know, I can say, Wallahi, I sat on that same PIA flight many times in my life. I've taken that route from Lahore to Karachi more than you can imagine. More than you can imagine. And I always would fly PIA and I would always take that flight. Friday once. Because Beniratan was closed. On Friday. I would go Friday, come back. And here it is, it fell. It was so close to home. Don't think it's so far away. Don't think it's so far away. When Usama bin Zayd radiallahu anhu bought food for one month. He stocked up for 1 month. 1 month. We already do that anyways. He stocked up food for 1 month. And the Prophet ﷺ smiled at him. He said, what happened to Usama? He thinks he's going to live for 1 month? Does he think he's going to live for 1 month? He doesn't know if he's going to live past his one footstep. If Ramadan had a tongue, it would have told us the bitter truth of this. So my dear brothers and sisters, let's follow through. Let's follow through. We don't know what's going to happen next. If we did good in the month of Ramadan, follow through with more good. Because remember, it's not about the act, it's about the follow through. Whether you did good or bad, it's always about the follow through.